We do giant stories on a weekly basis on a limited budget. The dustings just keep getting better. I think when they first started out, they were just people going poof, and now what's really cool is you can see the evolution of them as the show progresses. You start to see their underlying skeletal structure before they go.
Buffy! Joss had some very specific ideas about what he wanted to see when a vampire turned to dust. He wanted it to feel as if at the point of impact, all the moisture in a human being's body were just eradicated in this chemical explosion. So all these things were great, and Joss was like, yeah, that's great, but how do we do it when characters moving in live action? How do we integrate those kinds of effects without having like these tedious, boring lock-offs? And I said, well, that's where we're going to have to go to, 3D animation and compositing.
CG is computer graphics, and that really encompasses everything that comes out of the computer.
The process is basically taking elements and compositing them or layering them on top of each other in order to form a shot.
We build a rough skeleton or geometric form. We might add textures to it. Whatever shading we do to that, we then animate that object. What render refers to is the combination of all of those elements, the animation, the geometry, the textures, whatever paint we might have applied to it. The computer puts it all together and generates an image.
It's important that you don't let go of the live action right away, because I want to see these human features. I want to see the facial acting. And I told the compositors then to use that as long as they could before they transitioned into what would be elements of dust, rubble, bone. And we ran it by David and Joss, and they're like, it's close, but there was just no visceral connection with all these pieces. And it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I was looking at this piece of like tinfoil, and I brought it into the compositing bay, and I said, what if we use something like this with a moving light over it? And the compositor said, hey, whatever, let's just try everything. And it looked like the process was there.
There was something missing. And what we discovered was the bones, the infrastructure of the vampire at that point. We never really saw that. We had CG build a skeleton.
And that was a big breakthrough in the dusting. When Willow goes to dust, and you watch it, and you go through it frame by frame, you see flesh eroding to dust, eroding to bones.
The skeleton was what revolutionized them. I think the first time we showed them the skeleton, everybody was like, oh my God, I can't believe it, that's awesome.
This direction, that Chris suggested is what brought us to this new level. And we're continuing to refine it even today. A morph is essentially a warp and a dissolve. It's two different pieces of film that are warped and dissolved into one another.
It's not really a new effect. We can't really claim to have designed it or created it in any way. What we think we've done is kind of finessed it and really worked on making it as seamless as possible.
When we first started morphing on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, we were morphing one full body into another full body. In season 3, we began to warp one full scene into the same scene with a different face.
And Lonnie and I sat down and said, well, what if we really kind of watched what we were shooting on stage and just cut the face off and tracked it onto the other character? The morphs started to work. They started to be seamless. It also enabled us to have more elaborate morphs.
The first time we actually did the face replace on the morph was again Doppelgangland. Allison has an evil twin, and when they meet, they interact. Not only do they interact, but they fight, they love each other.
Well, look at me. I'm all fuzzy.
But what was really important to production and to Joss was that they weren't photographed as traditional split screens.
We could be quite a team if you came around to my way of thinking.
Joss wanted multiplicity for television. He wanted the characters to interact. He wanted Good Willow to be able to hug Bad Willow, to be able to lick Bad Willow, and live in the same frame. So I went to Chris and I said, why don't we just have a stunt double, grab Willow and, we'll just replace her face the whole time. We'll stick it on there and it'll be fine, right? And he's like, you're crazy. You're absolutely nuts. And
Questions? Comments?
later on the green screen, have that footage for playback, through a crude switcher, but one that just gets us in the ballpark. We were able to then line up the Good Willow, to the stunt double and actually have her repeat those same actions.
This just can't get more disturbing.
We really rely on compositing and Chris, to manipulate and reposition, these elements to make them work.
Really starting to freak me out.
Chris really had to, painstakingly track the Good Willow's face onto the stunt double's head so that it, really blended in and it really felt like it was there the entire time.
The pool effect in Anne was primarily CG. What they were looking for at that point was a very kind of thick, gelatinous, syrupy type of liquid so that it could suspend from both the ceiling and the floor, and the characters could pass through it.
Our 3D team was saying, look, we've got the new software, we have rendering capability, let's go for it.
We kind of kill the characters if we actually start to send them through some gelatinous type material, and they weren't going to be happy with us at all.
When Alias Wavefront came out with some of its early water tools, which is what we used in Anne, to create these displacements, it was because of those tools that we were able to make that effect happen.
What we'll do is shoot the person going through a non-existent thing, falling into a hole or climbing up through a hole, and we'll roto or track our 3D model to that.
This is one of Chris's greatest strengths, is that he's knowing the show and knowing the look of the show and knowing the elements that we've shot over the years. He's quickly able to kind of pull from older effects from older libraries and create new things. On Revelations, Joss came to me and said, I'm going to have this really big episode where the glove of Midikin calls down lightning from above. Like, what if it pulls the power of thunder? Is that affordable? Can we do that in the time frame? And I said, absolutely we can. Lightning is a frame-by-frame process. It's hand-placed into the scene by the animator.
The big advantage to choosing to go in a hand-drawn lightning fashion rather than using filters or elements was that it enabled us to design and manipulate the lightning.
Kiki Chansamone, who's someone we work regularly with for this kind of work, which is hand-drawn 2D animation, came in and spent 2 weeks hand-rotoing, which is frame-by-frame drawing, just like you would draw on an image. He hand-drew all of this lightning.
We brought him in and said, design this, take a look at it, come up with something. We're not looking for lightning, we're looking for lightning power, something with a lot of energy and a lot of magic to it.
Season 3 was a big year for Buffy in terms of its experimentation with 3D effects. Joss was interested in finding out just how quickly and cost-effectively we could generate 3D elements and characters. The first time that this happened was for episode 6, Band Candy, and he wanted to experiment with the idea of having a monster that was bigger than life interact with live-action characters on television. This was a huge thing to ask of a 3-week post schedule, and he knew it, but he wanted to see what could be done. Band Candy was our first experiment with a 3D creature, and we did it in under 4 weeks with 3 animators, and for the time frame and for a first time, I think we did quite a good job with it. Bruce Minkus built us an incredible rig that had it was a long arm with a big metal Pac-Man on the end of it. It looked like the snout of the creature. We used this as a sightline for Sarah Gellar to watch as she was performing without the creature. But we also used this as a deflector for Sarah's stunt double and point her flamethrower at. So she pointed her flamethrower at it and hit the nose of the thing, and the flame split over the monster. That's really, I think, what made that effect work.
Did it work? Let's find out. Open the cage.
Joss wanted him to instigate combat with a captured vampire. We talked about how John Vulich might be able to construct a photorealistic live head that could be split in half physically on the set.
The face here is a different person than the mayor, because when we shot it, we only saw it from the back, so we didn't think it was necessary to put the actor through a head cast.
John's concern was that his rigging would become apparent in a frontal view. So what John said that he could do was to give us a rear view that looked real good.
Today is about change. Graduation doesn't just mean your circumstances change, it means you do. I guess we'll just skip to the big finish.
I really like the snake monster. We added some special effects. When the vampires get hit by flaming arrows, they actually burst into flame before being dusted.
You have no idea what you're dealing with.
Let me guess. Is it evil?
In Band Candy and Amends, we had presented some 3D creature work that suggested that we might be able to handle an entire nemesis in CG. And he said, guys, at the season finale, I'm going to want a 3D nemesis. The mayor is going to become giant snake. Okay. And we don't have to see his bottom half. Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. We don't have to show the little things crushing things. Okay, we can probably do that.
One of the things that Lonnie and I sat down to discuss were things like, how are we going to make this work and really live in the scene? Kind of falls back to the always wanting it to look organic and wanting it to really not look like an effect.
We just didn't have the time to create Jurassic Park for television.
We decided at that point that lighting was going to be really the issue here, and that's when we decided on the lighting scheme being darker. That's a completely practical head, blue screen head that comes smashing through that door. And Buffy's a composite on top of it. She was shot on blue screen on a later day, and all CG had to do was do a monster that basically moved in that direction. We then chroma keyed out the doors and all the debris on front and put the snake-like creature back there. The processes behind the things that had been learned over the course of the season, it was quite an accomplishment. We were pleased.
Well, I think we're always getting closer to reality. What we want to do is we want to very accurately represent the real world.
It's a lot of being creative and also being able to look at things in a new light.
I don't think we'll have to wait too long before we have everything that we need to represent reality on the computer.